This game was crazy. All right, this game was crazy. In the first half, the Indiana Fever looked amazing. They were hot, on fire. I could have sworn their jerseys was on fire the way that they were balling. Yo, when I say they were shooting the lights out, let's give it up for Lexi. In that first quarter, it was Lexi's game. Can I get a whole yeah? That's what was going on in that first quarter, fam. And she was just completely
Okay, this is wild. Lexi Hull just absolutely exploded on the court in a way literally no one saw coming. With the Indiana Fever's roster basically collapsing from injuries, she stepped in and played like her career depended on it. Because, honestly, it kind of did. The result, a jaw-dropping career night that has fans buzzing and everyone else wondering how much more this team can take.
Set at 164.5 as Lexi Hull dials up a three.
But before we dive into her insane performance, I've got a question for you. Was Hull's breakout night a fluke, or is this the start of her becoming a true force for Indiana? Drop your take in the comments below because this is one for the debate clubs. Now let's set the stage, and fair warning, it gets pretty dark. The Fever were already without 4 core rotation players. Caitlin Clark sidelines since July 15th with a groin injury, Sophie Cunningham out with a torn MCL. Sydney Colson gone with an ACL tear, and Erie McDonald shut down with a foot problem. That's brutal enough, right? Then against Minnesota, disaster doubled down. Chloe Beebe had knee soreness during warm-ups and was held out, and Odyssey Sims left in the fourth quarter, never to return. Add it all up, that's 6 players sidelined. On a team already struggling for balance, that's not just bad, that's catastrophic.
But we're right there. So I think we can head into Sunday's game with a little bit of confidence on we can compete against anybody.
And yet, in the middle of all that absolute chaos, Lexi Hull stepped up and played the game of her life. She didn't look rattled by the mounting injuries or the insane pressure to fill roles way beyond her usual spot. Instead, she carried herself like someone who knew this was her moment to shine. From the opening tip, she was moving with purpose. Her first few shots were pure, her cuts were razor sharp, and you could tell she wasn't just waiting for opportunities, she was actively hunting for them. That shift in mindset, that killer instinct, completely changed everything.
The defense was there, the hustle was there. I liked everything about what was going on in the first quarter. They were just outplaying the Lynx. They looked really good, right? And then we get to that second quarter. The second quarter, I loved how the entire team turned on fire. I mean, they were on fire, scorching, heating it up.
Get this. By halftime, Hull already had 18 points on the board. The kind of numbers you usually expect from a healthy Kelsey Mitchell or even Caitlin Clark. Every single shot she hit just seemed to pump up her confidence, and you could actually feel that energy radiating out to her teammates. She wasn't playing scared or tentative. She was sprinting through open lanes, pulling up for contested threes without a flicker of hesitation and making Minnesota defenders look completely lost. The Fever bench erupted after every make, and you could just sense that the whole team and every fan watching bought into her performance. And here's the kicker. Hull wasn't just racking up garbage time points, her scoring came right in the flow of the game when Indiana was battling Minnesota possession for possession. She dropped points when they truly mattered, when the game was still hanging in the balance, and that's what made her night so ridiculously impressive. It wasn't luck, it wasn't stat padding, it was legitimate production in real minutes, with real pressure squarely on her shoulders. Honestly, this kind of performance makes you scratch your head and wonder why Hull has been stuck on the back burner so often this season. Stephanie White has relied heavily on Cunningham, Mitchell, and Clark when they're available, basically relegating Hull to a supporting role. But here, with the roster stripped to its absolute bones, Hull proved she can do way more than just spot up in the corner or provide hustle minutes. She showed she can be a focal point, even against one of the deepest teams in the league. Post-game, her words basically said it all. When asked about her mindset, Hull admitted she knew the team needed someone to step up. She said, "We're missing people, so everyone's got to do a little bit extra. Be a little bit more aggressive offensively. That was my mindset going in." That's not just a player filling minutes, that's a player recognizing the moment and leaning into it hard. Stephanie White even praised Hull for being aggressive, for hunting her shots, for not just waiting for the ball to be fed to her. That's been the knock on Hull in the past, that she could disappear if others were dominating touches. But on this night, she completely flipped that narrative. She was the one setting the tone, forcing defenders to respect her and creating space for others by demanding attention herself. And let's not downplay those numbers. Hull finished with a phenomenal 23 points on 9 of 16 shooting, including 4 of 7 from 3, while logging nearly. That's not just efficient, that's a player carrying a heavy load and still delivering at a high clip. Most importantly, she looked comfortable doing it. There was no deer in the headlights energy, no sense that she was overwhelmed by the responsibility. Instead, she looked like she'd been waiting for this exact moment.
Unbelievable third quarter from Stephanie White. Coming out once again, I will never back off of this. If you come out flat in the third quarter, if you give up leads in the third quarter, I'm going to question you as a coach. Because what is it are you doing at halftime? It's clear. What happens is the team that's down goes in, they make adjustments at halftime. They come back out. They apply those adjustments. The coach that is winning the game needs to be prepared to be able to make an adjustment to their adjustment. Because the adjustment is coming. No, Stephanie White, no, I don't do that. That's above my pay grade.
But here's where things get incredibly frustrating. Because as brilliant as Hull's night was, it wasn't enough to fix the massive holes left by 6 missing players, and that's where the conversation shifts from celebrating her to seriously questioning the Fever as a whole. Injuries have absolutely shredded this roster, making every game feel like a desperate patch job, with hardship signees like Shea Petty getting thrown into the fire just to keep the team afloat. Petty, credit where it's due, gave them 10 points on 3 of 4 from deep in her debut, but expecting her to seamlessly run the offense when she barely had time to learn the playbook. That's just not realistic, and that disconnection showed big-time plays that used to flow with Caitlin Clark initiating now stalled out. Aaliyah Boston fought for position inside, but passes came late or at bad angles, and possessions frequently broke down into rushed jumpers or sloppy turnovers. By the third quarter, fatigue set in, rotations completely lagged, and Minnesota pounced, outscoring Indiana 32-7 in that frame alone, absolutely flipping the game on its head. This isn't a new problem either. The Fever have followed a pattern all season: strong first halves, followed by complete collapses in the third quarter when opponents adjust and Indiana just does. Fans have rightly pointed fingers at Stephanie White for the lack of in-game adjustments. And this game was no different. Minnesota spread the floor, attacked straight-line drives, and punished Indiana on the offensive glass, while the Fever kept trying to run the same ineffective coverage. That's pure coaching stubbornness, plain and simple. And while we're talking about players, let's talk about Aaliyah Boston's night. Stat-wise, she gave them 15 points and 6 rebounds, but for long stretches, she looked passive, standing at the three-point line instead of aggressively planting herself in the paint. Critics were quick to call her out, saying she disappeared until the final minutes of the fourth quarter when she finally woke up and scored 8 points in a short burst, but by then it was too late. She simply cannot be a ghost for 3 quarters and then suddenly expect to save the day, especially not with Clark out, not with Cunningham out, not when half the roster is taped together with hardship contracts. Kelsey Mitchell, on the other hand, did her part, dropping 27 points and dishing 5 assists. She was the steady hand, the one who constantly forced Minnesota to respect her shot, but she desperately needed Boston to show up as her co-star. Instead, she got Hull carrying the secondary scoring load, which is fantastic for Hull's confidence, but brutally exposes the roster's imbalance. Then there's Natasha Howard, who had a night to forget. She tried bringing the ball up the court twice, and both times ended in disaster. 1 turnover, 1 offensive foul. That's just not her role, and she looked completely overmatched, and at one point, Jessica Shepard flat-out dominated her with a triple-double performance. Shepard looked like the best big on the court, and that's a huge problem when Boston and Howard are supposed to be holding down Indiana's front court. Meanwhile, Minnesota got huge nights from Caleb McBride, who absolutely torched Indiana with 29 points, and Natasha Hiedeman, who cooked off the bench for 17. Every single time the Fever tried to claw back, McBride or Hiedeman slammed the door shut. That's the brutal difference between a team built with depth and a team scrambling to piece together lineups. So yes, Hull's explosion was incredible. Yes, Mitchell battled hard, and yes, Petty gave them a surprising boost, but when 6 of your rotation players are unavailable, those individual efforts only go so far. The Fever simply don't have the margin for error to survive nights like this, where Boston looks passive, Howard gets exposed, and the coach doesn't adjust when opponents shift gears. And the worst part, the schedule doesn't get easier. The Fever face the same Minnesota team again in just a few days, this time on the road. After that, they've got the Seattle Storm, Phoenix Mercury, Atlanta Dream, Sparks, and Valkyries. Teams all fighting for playoff spot. Without Clark back, without Cunningham, without half their rotation, the odds of sneaking into the postseason look slimmer by the day. Still, Hull's performance is a major silver lining. If nothing else, she proved she can handle bigger minutes and responsibilities, and that matters immensely going forward. Because if Indiana has any chance of holding on until Clark returns, they're going to need Hull playing with the same level of confidence every single night. The other shocking part of this game was just how utterly fragile the Fever's depth has become. When Odyssey Sims left in the fourth quarter, the coaching staff literally had no choice but to throw Shea Petty into running the offense. Even though she had just joined the team on a hardship contract and hadn't practiced enough to even know the sets. It was pure survival basketball. Players figuring things out on the fly, mismatched lineups, stumbling through possessions, and chemistry that simply wasn't there. Minnesota exploited that in every way possible. They started hammering the Fever with straight-line drives, spreading the floor to create wide-open looks, and pounding the offensive glass to generate endless second chances. Indiana's defense, already worn down by heavy minutes, completely broke apart. Rotations were late, closeouts were lazy, and Boston found herself trying to guard 2 or 3 players under the rim. The Lynx smelled blood and ran up that brutal 32-7 third quarter. That was the undeniable turning point. It's so frustrating because Indiana showed in the first half that they absolutely can hang with a top team like Minnesota. They shot lights out from 3. Hull was torching defenders, and Mitchell was keeping the offense alive. But that momentum evaporated once adjustments came into play. Minnesota switched their looks, Indiana didn't. This exact problem has haunted this team all season. Halftime leads that vanish into thin air. The harsh reality is that, while Hull's career night was amazing, one player simply cannot carry the whole team. The Fever needed Boston to dominate, and she didn't. They needed Howard to defend the paint, and she couldn't. They needed White to make changes in the third, and she wouldn't. So Hull's explosion, as incredible as it was, became more of a silver lining than a true game changer. Now let's zoom out a bit. Indiana still sits in 6th place, but the margin is razor thin. Reports say they're just half a game ahead of 7th and barely a game and a half clear of 9th. That's the danger zone. Every time they collapse like this, the playoff window shrinks, and unless Clark returns soon, that window may slam shut altogether. So where does this leave Lexi Hull? In many ways, this is the best thing that could have happened to her personally. She proved she can handle the minutes, the scoring load, and the responsibility of being more than just a role player. She showed she can thrive even when defenses are keying on her. That's going to matter not just for the rest of the season, but for her role going forward, because the Fever simply can't afford to keep underutilizing her if she's capable of these kinds of nights. And that raises a critical question. If you were Stephanie White, how do you balance this moving forward? Do you continue giving Hull more touches, even once Clark comes back, or do you push her back into a supporting role and risk losing this newfound confidence? That's something the Fever are going to have to wrestle with in the coming weeks. Meanwhile, Kelsey Mitchell absolutely deserves her flowers. This team has leaned on her more than anyone since Clark went down, and she's answered almost every single time. Dropping 27 points against Minnesota isn't easy, especially when defenses are designed specifically to stop you. Her leadership, combined with Hull's outburst, gave Indiana a fighting chance, even in impossible circumstances. Without those two, this game would have been over by halftime. But let's not sugarcoat it, the defense is atrocious. They gave up 95 points, and honestly it could have been worse if McBride hadn't missed a couple of open looks in the fourth. For a coach who was supposedly hired for her defensive principles, White's schemes just aren't holding. If the Fever sneak into the playoffs, it won't be because of defense, it'll be because of pure shot making and Clark's eventual return. The tough part is that this roster just feels cursed. Cunningham out, Colson out, McDonald out, Clark out, and now Sims and Beebe hurt too. That's 6 players. No team survives that without major damage. Indiana has fought hard, but the cracks are showing, and even their brightest performances, like Hull's career night, are getting overshadowed by the avalanche of injuries and those crushing third-quarter collapses. Indiana showed flashes, but flashes simply don't win playoff races. If you want more breakdowns like this, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Should Hull be a permanent starter going forward?